We're finally getting some clarity on the Chicago Bears' plan for rookie second-round pick Ozzy Trapilo and the competition at left tackle. I think it's a smart strategy moving forward, but it's going to create some greater questions for the long-term future.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into an Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. On the show today, we check in on the Bears' plan for the offensive line. Rookie offensive tackle Ozzy Trapilo joining the competition at left tackle, at least for now, initially here, leaving Darnell Wright at right tackle. I think it's a strong, smart decision that makes sense when you really sort of think about the order of operations here and where the Bears stand at the left tackle position right now versus once you get to training camp. But I also think, depending on how that plays out, it creates some new questions for the long-term future as far as who's going to be where and what we should expect from them. And I also wonder if the Bears couldn't still use more depth on the interior of the offensive line. I'd like to talk about that as well as a part of this offensive line post-draft analysis here and kind of look at where the lineup could look like this year and into the future. Let's start with a home for Ozzy Trapilo. After the draft, Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles said, well, Darnell Wright could play left or right tackle. Trapilo could play left or right tackle. We'll work through that and figure it out when we'll let you know. Basically, hey, we got options. We're not sure yet what we want to do. But that all changed quickly when Ryan Poles did an interview. I think it was with ESPN 1000, some sort of Chicago local media. I don't remember if that or 670 Score, and was asked about Trapilo and where he's going to play, and says that they want to start with Ozzy Trapilo at left tackle in the left tackle competition. So now you've got incumbent starter Braxton Jones competing against second-round rookie Ozzy Trapilo, competing against last year's third-round pick Kiran Amegadjie. And I can see where, initially it's oh, well, 3 players trying to compete for the starting job it's going to be kind of tricky because you only have so many first-team reps. If you're trying to split that up 3 ways, or you could have somebody work against the third string, is that really a good measuring stick for how much progress Kiran Amegadjie's making if he's going up against third stringers versus Braxton Jones going up against first stringers? It's kind of hard to find enough opportunities to have a true, meaningful competition there between 3 different players. But there's an important layer to this that I think speaks to I was going to say genius of it, but it's not that genius, right? It's not that, it's nothing too crazy there, but this works out really well for the Bears because Braxton Jones is injured right now. Braxton Jones will not be participating in minicamp, OTAs, and might not even be 100% at the start of training camp. And so in the meantime, you can have Ozzy Trapilo just compete against Kiran Amegadjie. And those guys can alternate first-team reps. You can split up. It's not that bad to have 2 guys competing side by side. And one day somebody's with the first team, one day somebody's with the second team, then you flip them. Maybe they'll split first-team reps 50-50 or, and over the course of training camp, or I guess maybe OTAs and mini camp practices, you can kind of get a sense of which one of these 2 players is better. And then once Braxton Jones returns from his injury in training camp, in theory, hopefully early enough in that process to actually enter this conversation, you can have the winner of the Ozzy Trapilo Kiran Amegadjie competition then compete against Braxton Jones for the true starting job. I think of it like a bracket where Braxton Jones gets a first-round bye. The first battle for left tackle is Trapilo or Amegadjie. Winner faces Braxton Jones in the championship round, for the real gig. And the timing happens to kind of work out nicely there because of Braxton Jones' injury. Like, of course, you would prefer Braxton Jones isn't injured and gets as much offseason as possible, but the fact that he's out gives you the opportunity to spend more time putting Amegadjie and Trapilo directly head-to-head and not having to share some of those reps with Braxton Jones, so you can get a sense of like, okay, how much progress has Kiran Amegadjie made in one full year since you drafted him? And how NFL ready is Ozzy Trapilo? That was kind of one of the pros of drafting him, right? One of the strengths is like, this guy looks like plug and play, ready to go, NFL ready, good technique, good size, good strength. Like, yeah, he needs to keep his pad levels lower, but like he can plug and play, maybe lower ceiling, higher floor type of player. That should be someone who could, in theory, play right away as a rookie and maybe even be more NFL ready right now than Kiran Amegadjie, who we knew was raw and a developing prospect that's going to need time to grow into, his full potential here. And so if you had just left Ozzy Trapilo at right tackle and Kiran Amegadjie at left tackle, it would just be Amegadjie for OTAs and minicamp because Braxton Jones is hurt. There wouldn't be competition there. I mean, I guess Theo Benedette, the undrafted player who is kind of a training camp star, sure, I guess would have been in that conversation, but not really competing to start. So it just makes a lot of sense that, yeah, leave Darnell right there and then have Trapilo and Kiran Amegadjie, as opposed to like if you had moved Darnell Wright to left tackle, then are you having Kiran Amegadjie move to right tackle to compete with Ozzy Trapilo over there? Are you having Braxton Jones move to right tackle to compete with Trapilo and Amegadjie over there? Like, it just makes the most sense to have one person move, and that's Trapilo, move to a position he did play in college, and he's already adjusting to, he's going to have to learn a new playbook and new terminology and a bunch of new stuff anyway. So you might as well throw on, hey, left side versus right side. Like, it would be harder if he just got done learning right tackle in the NFL and then you switch him over to left tackle once he just started getting comfortable there. It's like, if he's going to be uncomfortable and learning on the fly anyway, why not make all the change all at once so he can just master all that instead of sort of stretching it out and making it that much more difficult for him over time. So I like the idea here of this sort of two-stage competition where it's still Braxton Jones as that sort of first-round bye. He's still the incumbent starter, but you get Amegadjie and Trapilo. Winner of that faces Braxton Jones. And then sort of like whoever is third place out of that trio then is a real backup. And then whoever second place out of that trio is sort of your top swing tackle choice. Like, third place is probably inactive on game days. If they're not going to be the swing tackle, you're not really going to keep two active backup offensive tackles on game day. And so when you think about it like that, most likely Kiran Amegadjie is going to finish third in that competition. I mean, if we're assigning our FanDuel odds, right, I think Amegadjie is likely to be third. And I would think, given that Braxton Jones has been a 3-year starter in the NFL, you would expect, when healthy, a 3-year starter in the NFL should be better than a rookie coming out of the draft, even a second-round pick. Like, it's not to say Braxton Jones is some great left tackle, but at least for now, he should be better. So in theory, I would put the odds on that if Braxton Jones gets healthy early enough in training camp, he should be able to win that left tackle competition. And that wouldn't mean that Ozzy Trapilo is some failure as a draft pick either. Like, it's okay if a veteran NFL starter beats out a rookie. Like, that's supposed to be the normal thing there. But however this competition shakes out, it does create some different questions for the long-term future and also for where the Bears want to keep offensive line depth on the 53-man roster and active on game day. So I want to take a look at some of the fallout and repercussions from however this left tackle competition could play out next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know that your Amazon Fire TV is also an Xbox? That's right, you can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. And dive into hundreds of premium titles like EA Sports College Football 25 and Call of Duty just as easily as you stream your favorite shows. So, like, if there's a game you've been wanting to try, but you don't want to spend all the money on a console, well, you can just try it with your Amazon Fire TV Stick. And with the TV Stick, you can take it on the go. You don't have to lug a console around if you're at a hotel or between different bedrooms in your house or your vacation with your kids, whatever you need to do. The Amazon Fire TV Stick can come with you. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. So depending on how this left tackle competition plays out, it could leave Ryan Poles and the Bears in some, I don't want to say tricky or difficult situations, because it's a good problem to have when you have, too many good offensive tackles. If you're like, well, you want Braxton Jones to start because he's a good enough player, and you want Ozzy Trapilo to start because you use a second-round pick on him, and you don't want to give up on Kiran Amegadjie as a third-round pick. You want him to be able to develop and still be part of this team. So you have more players than spots for them. That's a good problem to have. But I wonder how this shakes out in a couple of different ways. So first of all, I think the one thing that's not a question to me, the one thing I think we can predict pretty accurately, is that regardless of how this left tackle competition plays out, there's not a world. I can't envision a scenario where Braxton Jones plays for the Chicago Bears beyond this season. Like, this has to be Braxton Jones' last season. Like, when you drafted Ozzy Trapilo in the second round, that was automatically signifying that this will be Braxton Jones' last season. Like, unless, Trapilo has to medically retire, unless there's some crazy thing comes out of nowhere, like, this will be Braxton Jones' last year with the Chicago Bears. Braxton Jones is going to be a free agent. They're not going to pay Braxton Jones a massive contract extension to play left tackle at a high cost after having just used second and third round picks on left tackles in the last two drafts. To me, I wouldn't be shocked if they traded Braxton Jones at the trade deadline, even if he's your starting left tackle. Like, if they just feel like Ozzy Trapilo's good enough and ready to go, and Jones is better, but you get to the trade deadline, it's like, well, you could get, I don't know what draft pick you get for Braxton Jones mid-season, but if you could get a fourth round pick, maybe even a fifth round pick, is that enough to say, yeah, put the rookie in there, we'll be fine, just as opposed to letting Braxton Jones walk in free agency and you hope to get a compensatory pick, but it depends on how the rest of free agency goes for you. It's something to at least keep on the radar there. But I'm more interested in what happens with mainly Kiran Amegadjie, but also Ozzy Trapilo in this conversation, because I never want to totally count out Amegadjie. I think there's a lot to still like about his potential, but I think he's going to be still quite a bit behind where Trapilo and Braxton Jones are. And so I would imagine that Kiran Amegadjie will end up being kind of the third string there. And then we can call it a coin toss between Braxton Jones and Ozzy Trapilo, whoever starts, whoever's the backup there. But whoever loses that competition is the swing tackle, right? So that if there's an offensive tackle injury at either side, the loser of Trapilo versus Jones will be the first backup off the bench at offensive tackle, the player you would trust the most to step in, because you feel like any of them could probably be a starting caliber player over the course of this season. But then, what do you do with Kiran Amegadjie? Does he sit inactive on game days? You're certainly not going to release him. You're not trying to stash him on the practice squad after 2 seasons as a third round pick. So he's going to be on your 53-man roster. But I can't help but wonder if there's not a temptation or a real value to, if you get to the point where Trapilo and Braxton Jones are clearly ahead of Kiran Amegadjie, then moving Kiran Amegadjie inside to guard. I want to say there was some sprinkling of that last year in training camp, of him occasionally taking some snaps inside. We do know that during his college career at Yale, he did play some guard there, especially earlier on. He's mostly been playing tackle ever since. But you can kind of look at it and say, well, if Amegadjie's not going to be the first choice backup offensive tackle, he might have a better path to playing time if he moved inside to guard. Because you look at where the Bears stand on the interior right now, you've got Ryan Bates, who's kind of your number one veteran backup on the interior, can play guard or center. And then it's guys that, don't have a lot of experience or pedigree. It's your rookie 6th round pick, Luke Newman from Michigan State. There's former undrafted free agent Bill Murray, who looked good in some small sample sizes, but we don't know if he's actually something you can count on or not. You got Doug Kramer, the center fullback hybrid, who played some guard, but didn't look particularly great there. That's 2 6th round picks, an undrafted free agent, and Ryan Bates. That's your interior offensive line backups right now. Everybody else is kind of, camp bodies and not much else to write home about in that regard. And so I wonder then if I'm Kiran Amegadjie and I'm Ryan Poles, like, isn't a winner for everybody that, hey, you could move Amegadjie to guard, and then he and Ryan Bates can be your backups. Let's say you keep 8 offensive linemen. You're starting 5 plus whoever loses the left tackle battle. So like you're starting 5 and plus Trapilo, and then Bates and Amegadjie, where Trapilo can play either tackle spot, Amegadjie can play tackle or guard, and Bates can play guard or center. And then you can throw Luke Newman on the practice squad or Bill Murray or Doug Kramer on the practice squad or whatever. But like that would seem like the most efficient way to make the most out of the talent that you have. If you have some confidence in Amegadjie's ability to play guard there, then it's like, oh, good. You find playing time for Amegadjie and you increase your depth at guard. Like that seems like a win-win on paper. But then I start to think about it, and it's like, well, if this is indeed Braxton Jones' last year with the Chicago Bears, as we all fully expect, well, then next year, for sure, Trapilo is going to be your starting left tackle. But do you want Amegadjie to compete with him for that left tackle spot? Do you want to make that an open competition there? So then you're moving Amegadjie into guard for this year, but then moving him back outside to tackle next year? Because you're going to need a swing tackle then if you move on from Braxton Jones and Trapilo takes over as a starter. You need a backup offensive tackle there. So do you then want that to be Amegadjie? And then are we playing this game where Amegadjie's a tackle, and then you move him inside to guard, and then you move him outside to tackle, and for him being a player who is raw and skilled but in need of development, right? It seems like the best thing for Amegadjie is to say, hey, you play this one position, become the best you can at that position, and then once you master that, we can start to talk about playing other positions. But like, let's put you in one spot. And so the question then becomes, is that spot guard or tackle? Because you don't necessarily want to do both, where it's like, I think what would benefit the Bears the most this year is, Kiran Amegadjie is a backup guard, and then Braxton Jones or Trapilo is your starter, and then Braxton Jones or Trapilo is your backup. The loser of that is your backup, and then Amegadjie is a guard, and boom, you got your offensive line depth really solidified top to bottom. But then I would want to leave Kiran Amegadjie at one spot at guard, but if you're leaving him at guard, then he's not going to have a chance to start, assuming you sign Joe Thuney to a contract extension, then you got Thuney, Dahlman, and Jackson for at least a couple seasons. So there's not really ever going to be an opening at guard for the next couple years. So then your third-round pick in Amegadjie is just going to kind of sit on the bench and be a backup. I mean, at least if he's still a left tackle, he has the opportunity to compete to start there. Whereas he's not really going to have the opportunity to compete to start if you move inside the guard. There's not going to be an Amegadjie-Thuney competition. And presumably, there's not going to be a Jonah Jackson-Amegadjie competition. But if Jackson has more injury issues or doesn't bounce back, that could be a wild card to throw in there. But so it just seems to me there's some interesting opportunities there and some questions about what's best for Kiran, what's best for the team. Like what's best for the team in the long term? Is it trying to get the most out of Kiran Amegadjie as a tackle prospect you believe in, or filling a hole on the interior of your offensive line? You can kind of make a case for either one there, and how they decide to handle that is going to be interesting. I'm really glad though that we've heard Ryan Poles now say the plan is we're going to find everyone's position and then leave them there. Not going to be moving guys back and forth in training camp and rotating and all this stuff. He's like, no, we'll have the competition at left tackle, but we're not going to be having guys bouncing around between all these positions. We want guys to build continuity at one spot and have a lineup together that can stick together throughout the process. So about time the Bears have an offensive line coach with that kind of philosophy, and hopefully they actually stick to it as much as they talk about being able to do that. But then if you don't move Amegadjie inside the guard, kind of left feeling like I could use some more depth at guard because it's Ryan Bates and a bunch of late round picks, undrafted free agents. So does that then mean free agency? There's a couple of veteran names out there that might be intriguing that have some connections to the Chicago Bears staff. So I want to take a look at what the options might be, and then we can kind of weigh that against Amegadjie as a potential backup guard, or do you just roll with the young guys that you have? We'll take a look at the different options next on Locked On Bears. We talked a little bit on yesterday's podcast about the pass rushing need and some free agents available there. So this is sort of mirroring that conversation for the D-line. Now we're talking about it for the offensive line where, you needed a number 3 edge rusher, and there's some veterans still available. And I'd like to see more depth added on the interior of the offensive line because I mean, I don't even know how well we can trust Ryan Bates at this point. The Bears traded a 5th-round pick for him, but like, it's not like we've seen him play at a super high level in Chicago. So I think Bates is the only one on that interior that's like, I would say in pencil is going to make the 53-man roster, but there's no guarantees 6th-round pick Luke Newman makes the 53. There's no guarantee Bill Murray makes the 53. No guarantee Doug Kramer makes the 53. Bates is the only guy there right now today that you're like, yeah, I would be surprised if he missed the 53-man roster at this point. So do you go out then and add another interior offensive lineman in free agency, or would you rather go Kiran Amegadjie? I mean, it kind of depends on what you feel like your good options are there. And so when you look at the free agent offensive line market right now, I was a little surprised, especially on the interior. There's some real guys with starting experience and value here that are still on the market that I'm wondering if they're waiting for a team's offensive lineman to get hurt and then sign with that opportunity. But maybe eventually some of these guys say, screw it, I would like to have a contract. I'd like to play for a team. Let me just get into a situation like the Bears where I think they could have a good offense, and I'll be a backup and maybe get a chance to start if there's an injury at any point on the line for them up there, which with the likes of Jonah Jackson's injury history and Drew Dalman has some injury history, it's not necessarily a bad bet for a free agent to make. And also emphasizes the need for the Bears to have a better player as an option there. And so when I look at the free agent offensive line options right now, the top name out there, I think, in terms of name recognition is Brandon Scherf of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's been a starter his whole career. He's been a Pro Bowler before, but now at age 33, you start to wonder, what level of play he's going to get in the long term. And maybe that's what has kept him from signing so far and is what kept him from getting a starting opportunity right now. But would he come to Chicago, be a backup, and then if Jonah Jackson gets hurt, he plugs in a guard, and it's like, wow, there you go. A nice little opportunity for him. Because Bears passing game coordinator Press Taylor was Brandon Scherf's offensive coordinator in Jacksonville for, I think, a couple of seasons the last few years. And so there's a familiarity there and a potential level of comfort that the Bears could have with a free agent like that. But a couple other guys who were starters last year, Will Hernandez of the Arizona Cardinals, Daniel Brunskill from the Titans can play guard or center and could be options there. Again, I think those guys are probably still holding out for a team to give them a starting job. So you can't just go out there today and sign these guys as backups because they probably want a little bit more money than that, given what they've done recently in their careers. But if training camp rolls around and they're still unemployed and they say, screw it, I'll take a job, I think any of those three guys could be a clear upgrade over what the Bears have on the backup of the interior offensive line. But one other name with familiarity that we've talked about a little bit this offseason that I think we should keeping an eye on, I guess, or keep an eye on again, even after all the offensive line moves the Bears have made, it's Andrus Peat, who spent last season with the Las Vegas Raiders, has bounced around a little bit, but he was a first-round pick by the New Orleans Saints and was coached for many years by Chicago Bears offensive line coach Dan Rouchar. And so that familiarity would be thorough. Peat can play tackle or guard, perhaps at this stage of his career, probably more of a guard because but turns 32 during the season, so he's not as spry of a young lad as he once was in the NFL. And I think that experience, that familiarity, and that versatility, and he's not going to be expensive because he wasn't a starter last year for the Raiders, so it's not like he's holding out waiting for a starting job at this point. He kind of knows he's a backup at this stage, and so if he knows the O-line coach, he could be a great mentor for some of the young guys in there. I mean, obviously, Tooney and Dude Dahlman can too, but somebody who could be a backup with Luke Newman, for example, and kind of take him under his wing while the starters do starter stuff, to have a veteran backup in there as a coach in the room. I think Peat could be a really good option there. And then I'll throw out an old friend, friend's too strong of a word, but a familiar face, Dan Feeney, who you may remember the Bears traded for. I think it was like a 6th-round pick a couple years ago as a backup for the offensive line. He's a free agent still if Ryan Poles loves him some Dan Feeney. I mean, I'm guessing we'd all prefer to go in a different direction there, but he's still a free agent. Spent last year with the Minnesota Vikings, has some positional versatility with him as well as a guard or a center. So just to have a veteran in there with some more experience, with maybe some better coaching this time around in Chicago, I think that's an option. Or throw in Mark Glowinski, who has had some injuries recently, but was with the Indianapolis Colts last season and spent some time with the Giants before that, originally with the Seattle Seahawks. I think it was a 4th-round pick for them. And he's kind of moved in this backup role, spot starter kind of guy who I think has some good value experience. Because at the end of the day, we're not looking for this player to come in and play a lot. And hopefully they don't play at all. But I would rather have one of these kind of players come in and play if Jonah Jackson has yet another injury or if Drew Dahlman's ankle continues to cause problems. Like, I would much rather have one of those veteran free agents come in than 6th-round rookie Luke Newman from Michigan State or even former undrafted free agent Bill Murray. Like, yes, he looked good in the game or so that he played, but that's not proof of concept. That's not to say he is this great backup waiting in the wings. Like, we gotta see more before we can really be sold on Bill Murray, and I don't want that to be plan A. I suppose Ryan Bates is plan A at that point, but even Ryan Bates, have we seen him play at a high level in Chicago? I'm not so convinced of that. Like, he's got the versatility and the experience, and so I'm happy to have him, but I'd like to have other options as well in case Bates goes in there and is bad. And then it's like, then what? Then what do you do? Like, then do you move Kiran Amegadjie on the fly? Hey, mid-season, we got to move you inside the guard. Sorry, we should have been working you at guard the whole time. Like, I like the idea of kind of all of the above. I like the idea of cross-training Amegadjie at guard in some areas and bringing in a veteran as well, and then kind of figuring out from there. Like, you can't have too many good offensive linemen. Sign Andrews Pete. And then, at the end of training camp, Amegadjie's a guard, Bates is your center, Trapilo's your swing tackle, then you can cut Andrews Pete and it's okay. Like, you don't want to or whatever, but it's okay. You can survive signing a veteran and then releasing him and having him not make the 53-man roster, especially if they're as inexpensive as somebody like Pete might be. Whereas like Brandon Scherf or whoever might end up costing you a bit more and maybe would be out of the Bears price tag. But again, right team, right opportunity. Would they take a reduced salary? Would they take a reduced role to be on a team that they might get a chance to play later in the season if there's injuries and might be a successful offense that you want to be a part of? I mean, it's supply and demand here, right? And there's some good offensive line options out there, and maybe the Bears are a more desirable landing spot than some of the other opportunities they could get come training camp. We'll see. Because we talked yesterday about signing edge rushers. Like, I don't know if the Bears can spend much money on an edge rusher and spend much money on a guard, so they got to kind of figure out their priorities there. Ryan Poles has said kind of all along about those spots and about running back that, hey, we want to see our guys at minicamp and OTAs, see how they look with our coaches, and then we can decide, do we need to sign Nick Chubb? Do we need to sign Andrews Pete? Do we need to sign Zadarius Smith? Like, I have a feeling they're going to take this slow, because if they really felt the need to sign one of these free agents, they probably would have already, like even before the draft. So I don't think a big free agent signing is happening immediately. I think in the coming days we'll learn more about the undrafted free agents the Bears have signed. I think they've signed. I'm guessing they will have signed more undrafted free agents than have been reported so far. We'll have rookie minicamp, and then the Bears will go through that process, then get guys in for voluntary OTAs, see how they hold up for a few weeks, and then reconvene and say, okay, do we need to sign a guard? Okay, do we need to sign a pass rusher? Okay, do we need to sign a running back? And that's when those conversations will happen, because I don't think there's a big hurry to do so now, because it's not like you're worried that some other team is going to take that free agent before you had the chance to sign him, because every team has had months to be able to sign these players and have chosen not to up to this point. So I think this will be a slow and steady approach as far as adding anything else to this Bears roster that aren't undrafted rookie free agents. When we get a full crop of UDFAs and rookie minicamp invites, we'll break down all the biggest names to know right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen, you can always find more football talk over on the Locked On NFL podcast, Locked On NFL Draft for more coverage of all the players picked, Locked On NFL Scouting as well, breaks down the game from a great angle with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. You can check out all of those podcasts wherever you find Locked On Bears. Just make sure that you come on back on Monday, make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.